Good morning. Welcome back to that Gen X Friend podcast. And before I begin, as usual, I want to give a shout out to MB Radio. Thank you. And also, not just MB Radio, thank you for all the people who continue to listen. And hopefully, you're getting something out of it, even if it's just to, I don't know, hear somebody share. So let's get to it, right? I'm going to read today's title because, you know, I don't know how else to introduce this. So this is the title is Ode to the Cone of Shame and its Consequential Coercions under Duress. Okay, I know that. Say that 5 times really fast, right? Oh my goodness. No, I'm good. So I wrote, I'm doing this podcast on this because, as the description says, my baby, excuse me, my fur baby really recently had surgery, minor surgery, and of course, I knew it was coming. I even asked him, like, does he have to wear the cone of shame? We're gonna call him Jojo. This will be his pen name, okay? So, like, does Jojo have to wear a cone of shame? And I think the tech kind of, from the vet, she kind of sounded like, don't you know this by now? Which I don't blame her. I knew the answer. I just had to ask. It's like, yeah, it's going to have to be on for like 10 to 14 days. And to anybody who's had fur babies, and especially ones who have had to take their fur babies in for any sort of anything that caused this right to happen, caused them to have to wear the cone of shame. We all sort of dread it because we know what's coming, and for those who don't know, you've probably seen it on like shows or even commercials. Like, they give you this, depending what and where the location of this whatever procedure was done at, they could potentially give them a less rigid cone of shame. However, this was not a choice for my fur baby, not for Jojo. So for those who can have the softer ones, I've never had that for any of my fur babies. I even asked him, like, can he have a more claspable one, like softer one? They're like, no, because he needed stitches and all this stuff. So all I imagined as soon as they said that, I had already conjured up all these images already prior to asking the question. I already knew the answers to. I just saw this running into walls, the need to not just running into walls, but how uncomfortable he was going to be, and how, like, every time I would have needed to do something like feed him or whatever, give him water, take him out to do his business, I would have had to take it off of him and put it back on. And as much as we love our fur babies, they can be quite willful, especially when it comes to wearing the cone of shame. And I imagined this endless, well, not endless, for 10 to 14 days, but daily and however many hours, but frequent fights and struggles, like the struggles, real people, the struggles to get it back on him. And no, he hasn't disappointed. He has not disappointed. We've had some struggles, and but it's always something that's happening in my life, or that I'm encountering, that brings about these topics. And this is dedicated to JoJo. He's going under his pen name. There's a reason for this, and maybe one day I will reveal it to you. Hopefully soon, whatever soon means. But you know, and this period of trying to take care of him after his surgery, after, because you can't have him chew out his stitches. That'd be bad, right? And give him medication and all the little things that I've had to do as sort of took over the schedule. And what sort of not, I guess, lessons, not that I didn't think about these things before, but it's been enlightening. So this is what I want to talk about. Wow, that was so that's sort of the I'm giving you the abstract of what the podcast is going to be about, but there will be some humor, because you can't talk about the cone of shame without some humor. So let's use JoJo as the example, because this is dedicated to him after all. When I was telling people, because I had to roofie the dude. I had to roofie JoJo because he has anxiety. The vet gave me some pills. They're like, oh, it'll make him chill out. And it was not a chill pill. It was more a roofie. Like, I had to roofie him multiple times. Poor thing. Poor JoJo had to be roofied. And I felt the betrayal in his eyes. And the morning when I took him into to the vet for his procedure, I had to roofie him. I know I say roofie because I don't want to say medicated, because it sounds terrible when you have to medicate your own pets. And it's the same sort of medication they give humans like us for anxiety. But anyways, I'm just going to use the term roofie. I had to roofie him the night before, and I had to sleep on the couch, right? Because I had done this prior to for blood tests and stuff, and he was so out of it. He was stumbling all over the place. I didn't know what to do. The first time I did it, I had to walk him up the stairs. He wasn't walking up the stairs, so I kind of had to pick him up, like half drag, half pick him up, and it was a clown show. So I stayed downstairs, basically didn't sleep, and envisioned all these, what was to come for the next week and a half, or 2 weeks. Anyways, I took him in. Of course, I did the fur baby mama thing. I cried, and the day went by. I should have taken those freaking anxiety pills. Anyways, but I was anxious the whole day. I go and pick him up, and they hand me this plastic. Dude, it's labeled 30 inches, right? So the cone is, because he's the size of him is rather big, I guess. 30 inches of like rigid plastic, and they're like, yeah, no, you have to keep this on him the entire time, because if he rips out his stitches it's on his leg, that would be very bad, because infections and then further surgery and so on. So, man, I took him home. He was still, of course, woozy. He was still roofied from this morning, and also his procedure. He was just like, like we are when we're drunk, but maybe not quite as animated for us military people. So as soon as I brought him home, regardless of how medicated he was and so on, I had to put that thing right onto him because, like, for fur babies to lick their wounds, that's natural. That's just a natural thing. Even though he was, let's just call him extremely drunk, um, I knew it was going to happen. Even though I didn't want to do it, even I didn't it. I felt bad and guilty and to put it on him, right? Because we've given him this label of cone of shame. But I think there was a new AT&T commercial. They call it the Elizabethan collar. You know how back in the day, like the queens and used to wear this rigid, like lace looking thing. Anyways, I thought it was cute, but too bad most people know this cone as the cone of shame. So I put it on him, and he not only looks miserable from the surgery, he looks miserable. Like, really, really, mom? Like, I'm already feeling drunk and miserable, and I don't know what's happening, and you're gonna put this thing on me? Like, somehow his gaze, like how he can express his emotions, and they have emotions, man. For all this, our fur baby parents, we know how they can express themselves through their gaze and how they look at you. Man, that look was, I felt like I was like, I felt bad. I felt horrible, right? And the cone of shame thing. And each time thereafter that I had to take it off for him to eat, to give him, to take him out, every time I put it on there, of course, he became more and more lucid. The look he gave me became more powerful, let's say. Yeah. Yeah. He has very, very expressive eyes. Let's just say that, right? But I knew, although I felt the guilt, I felt like, I don't want to do this to you, baby, but we have to. Like, I have to protect you because you don't know any better. You don't know any better not to lick at your wound, not to perhaps chew at it because it's itchy, because it's healing. And it resulted me in talking to him and explaining to him, like, listen, Jojo, like, dude, mama don't want to do this to you either. But I can't help it. I can't help it. I don't want you to go through this again because you tore out your stitches. And he would just look at me because it's uncomfortable to wear, because it's rigid, right? It's sitting on his neck and all this stuff. He's usually laying down with his, like, on his side or whatever. The best way so it can lay flat, so it's not, so he can get comfortable. However, he is giving me side eye or straight up staring at me. Like, it was a very, like, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. Eventually, as like couple days in, he would give me the, like, you know how anybody who's ever watched Shrek, Puss in Boots, does a big, huge eyeball, like, it just fills up his, and it looked like he would, like, his eyes were watering, like, mama, why? Like, he would do that. I was already trying to give him extra TREATs. He's laying right here. I don't want to get him excited and all kinds of crazy. I was already trying to give him extra TREATs during the day when he was more lucid to compensate for why he had to wear the cone of shame on top of me. Like, sometimes I'm like, dude, don't look at me like that. Like, I would be not angry, but frustrated. Sometimes I would be pleading. Sometimes I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was just so full of guilt. I would explain it to him. I would give him extra goodies, like, we can call it goodies because he does not know that word. And also, on top of that, I was already giving him extra goodies to get the medication down, right? Because he had to take antibiotics, he had to take pain medication, and this was like twice a day, morning and night. But as days went on, like I felt like whenever I put it on him, right? This is where the consequential coercions under duress came in. Like the look he would give me, it was so devastating. I felt like he was grabbing at my heart. I'm like, how could you do this to me? You know, I felt it, man. He got me. He got me good. This is not this is real. Like I can see it in his eyes. And then I would give him more and more goodies under duress, because I was feeling the pressure, because I was feeling guilty. I was feeling a range of emotions where not just with fur baby parents, right? I know parents will also understand where our kids will look at us sometimes because we are doing something for them in the moment they do not understand. And it could be young to even older kids, because, well, you know, when we're young, we're kind of lacking. Not because of anything we did wrong, but because of our lack of living, right? And this is where I came up. This is what I wanted to talk about, using JoJo as an example, right? But it goes into so much more than just our fur babies, our children. Life for any person who's living, and those we involve into our lives, like that are conscious, right? Have some sort of consciousness, such as our fur babies. Living will bring about various events that would cause real or perceived shame. Like for this, right? For JoJo, it's the cone of shame. And why, I don't know who coined this cone of shame thing. Why are we shaming our fur babies? I mean, it's funny. I really think there's dark sense of humor to it, and I appreciate it. But who came up with this cone of shame thing? Thanks, maybe. But in a sense, like I'll give an example. It doesn't have to be the physical, rigid cone of shame we wear on our necks, or our pets wear on our fur babies wear on our necks. But when I had my son while I was active duty, this is FYI, I don't have too much information. Well, I was breastfeeding. And the cone of shame, my cone of shame is that, well, you know, you got to go back to work and it doesn't matter. And there have been days where, this is back in the day when we starched our uniforms, people, okay? And they were like ovens on top of that. But it was especially shameful when I walked around, not because I wanted to, but it's consequences of living and becoming a mother and breastfeeding in the Marine Corps active duty. There was no pumping area. We didn't have that when I was in. So I had 2 wet marks on my pockets, and people be like, and they knew I had just come off of maternity leave. Oh, what's going on there? I'm like, I just did that on purpose. I poured 2, things of water down my uniform. I was already walking around shameful, feeling shame, right? Like the cone, because, not that I was walking into walls, but I was walking into people who are walls. and making that clanking noise, right? Because they were walls. You can't really talk to people like that. And they'd be like, they knew, but it was deliberate. So I felt this shame, this temporary shame, right? I knew eventually it would end because obviously, but for the time being, it felt like I felt guilty. I felt shameful. Right? But it was a part of my life. It was a part of my becoming a mother, and so on and so forth. And there's nothing I could do about it but to get over it and not to wear it proudly, because it is still, yeah, it happens, but people want to make fun of it. So stuff like that. And also, I can use another example. When we go through puberty, right? And everybody has gone through it, and will go through it. You get pimples, you get your voice changes for men, for boys, for girls. You know what happens there. And there are times where there's nothing we can do about it, but we wear as like this cone of shame. We're on top of, not only can we not change it because it's part of life, right? There's like, we make it worse on ourselves. And there's nothing that anybody can say to us that can make it better. And I don't compare ourselves to JoJo, but in a way that JoJo lacks consciousness to, like, oh, I have to do this because if I rip out my stitches, blah, 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 things would go badly. But from a parent's point of view, from somebody, even from, it doesn't have to be parents, from a friend, whatever, who's trying to explain these things, like, this is part of it. Everybody has to go through it. But it's the label, it's the cone of shame, the invisible cone of shame we all wear for all kinds of things that life brings about that we cannot change. Granted, this was, he had to get surgery, but some things are not of our control that happens, right? Obviously, I was the one to control the need to get it, because I didn't want whatever on his leg to grow a third eyeball and wink at me. I don't know. I just needed it gone because he was licking at it. Anyways, I digress. But then we wear this invisible cone of shame, running into walls because we don't know how, because we have lost our minds over whatever. And like him, although it's clear, right? His cone is clear. He doesn't know how to operate within this projection. It protrudes over his head, like about, I don't know, this much. So he has to then learn to navigate with this rigid thing on his head, walking about the same space. He knows how to navigate when he doesn't have it. And we are the same way. When these temporary, or maybe even permanent, depending on what happens, right? Like becoming a mom, that's permanent. It wasn't just the uniform thing. It's a whole slew of like you take your baby out, and they had a number 2 that was super, like it cleared out the whole freaking place kind of thing. There's nothing you can do about it, but it's not shameful. Yet we wear this invisible cone of shame, walking around bumping into things because now we don't know how to navigate, right? But there's nobody, and that's the sad thing. There's nobody. I don't know if there's nobody. We seldom have somebody like by our side, like, oh, this is normal, right? Maybe you do. I've never had that. There was nobody like I do with my fur baby, JoJo. Like, dude, you have to. This is just part of it, right? And there's also, for us humans, really seldom people giving us goodies to help us get past these temporary need to wear a cone of shame, or not a need, right? But that we feel the need to wear these things invisible, and everybody can see it. Everybody can see it. In a way, I think it's better that we don't have like, oh, it's okay, here's a goodie. Like, then we feel like anytime we encounter anything that's brings about real perceived shame, that we need to give ourselves goodies. I don't know. That's a question that I think it's not a black and white thing. Sometimes it's okay to, like, have some ice cream, you'll feel better later, or whatever. Do whatever is a goodie for you. That's normal. That's not like, oh, I'll go drink a whole keg of whatever, if that's the goodie. And us military people, we tend to do that. We use alcohol for good occasions, bad occasions, fantastic occasions, or doom, gloom, joy, excitement, whatever. Anyways, but sometimes, even though when we know is best, let's say when we're dealing with friends or whatever, kids that must go through something, and they internalize what's happening, and they feel shame for whatever reasons. You can give all kinds of there's all kinds of occasions that will bring about this, and we can sit there and we have to explain it over and over again, as frustrating as it could be. Like, I got frustrated. Sometimes he's giving me this stink eye. I'm like, dude, there's nothing I can do. You have to do this, or else we're going to have to go through this again. I'm going to have to roofie you. You're going to have to go through and the cone. Like, and we have to, what it feels like, endlessly explain why. Just why it has to be, whatever is happening has to be done. Even though they're obviously showing you, I don't want to wear this cone of shame. And you have to sit there and you have to plead, you have to argue, and you have to explain over and over again, to justify why this has to happen, right? And all you want to do is, like, okay, fine, no, you don't have to go through this. You can right now remove the cone of shame. But I know that if they remove this thing preventing them from, like Jojo, chewing on his leg and removing the stitches, it would be, the end result will be a lot worse, because there will be a gash, there will be infection, and the consequences could be numerous, right? And Jojo might have to wear his cone of shame for even longer, because he caused more damage than he has now. And likewise, for whoever you're trying to help and they just won't listen, and the moment you want to give up, it would be so much easier to give up than to get the stink eye. Here's an example, right? And as we've gotten, so as Jojo wore longer and longer and longer, like the first few days, he would actually pick up his head. He would, like, try to turn and run away, but I'm like, no, we're putting this on. And then you can see him like, okay. But as the days went on, he actually just stopped picking up his head. He would just lay there like, no, I'm not doing this. And I would have to physically pick up his head with one hand and then try to put this thing on him, as he's just like, I'm just going to play dead. I don't care. He became more like passive aggressive. I'm just not going to do this. You can put it on me, but yeah, I'm not helping you. I'm not picking on my head at all. So we can encounter all this too, right? But I knew as much as I wanted to give up this whole deal and just like, fine, whatever. I knew I couldn't. So I had to go through it. I had to talk to him. I had to give him copious amounts of goodies and try to do the best I could to pacify him, because I know he doesn't understand. He feels trapped. He doesn't know why he's running into, walls, chairs. And when he goes and lays down on his bed, he's running into the bed and he just can't get comfortable. He's laying his faces on this plastic thing. Yeah. Why is mom being mean to me? I just had to suffer through it and compensate, I guess, under duress, because those looks that he gives me are powerful. Like he's like a Jedi Knight. I swear. I'm telling you, it's crazy. But when it comes to people, regardless of who we're trying to help, we, just like with JoJo, I knew things where I had to, try to make him feel good about it, or at least, because he doesn't understand. But I was so not prepared to the degree that he had, I don't know, to how he had learned to use those looks like Puss in Boots, like the big old eyes, like, oh my God, why are you doing this to me? How good he got at it. And when, especially with children, right? It doesn't have to be with children. I keep coming back to children because, they do the same thing. But with whoever, it's not just the eyes. It's the emotions. It's the cry in their voice. It's the distress they're feeling from whatever needs to be done. They feel like, I know this has to be done, but I'm wearing this invisible cone of shame and I'm running into walls and I don't know what to do. Just relieve me of this right now. I will feel so much better. But you know. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. This is for your own good, right? And to give in, we cannot give in like I gave into JoJo. Right? Because there's a level of power and control that we have over our pets, right? Because, thank God they don't have opposable thumbs and so on and so forth. And I'm sure there are very smart furries that will do all kinds of things. But nonetheless, because they love us, they will stay with us, and we have a level of control over them, not like we do with other human beings. And to pacify with goodies, or to pacify with relenting on this thing that needs to be done, whether they feel real shame or not, because just for let's say, for those who need drug rehab, right? I mean, there's a level of stigma attached to it, right? And the shame is understandable, right? It could be real or perceived. I think they're both in our society. So, and all they want to do is, for whatever reason, even if they want to be rehabbed really bad, there's a shame. They just want to take it off. They're like, I can't handle this. And to give in, or to give goodies, you know what the goodies are, right? That's probably not a good idea. And we must stand firm and say, you know what, in as many ways as possible, as many times as possible, with appropriate within the situation. Of course, if people don't want to be helped, they seldom can be, because there's nothing we can do. We cannot control. We do not have the level of control we do over our fur babies. So obviously, this has to be appropriately applied. We have to do what we have to do and stand firm and not give in, right? So do not be coerced under duress from their emotions, the pleading, and all this stuff. Like, if I'm sure JoJo can cry and, not just only use his big eyes that looks like they're watering him out to cry. Man, he's good at it. Um, but humans are capable of a lot more than that. Expressive ways, right? I, don't do it. I have to admit, I did collapse under duress from his puppy dog eyes. But I knew there was nothing bad can happen. But like, I'm not feeding him. He's not like, Mom, give me some more of those drugs. Don't roofie me again. He's not asking for that. But that's why, and the sad thing about it, not the sad, and what really surprised me is that because for anybody who has fur babies, we know how hard it is to give them medication. So I had to buy a whole bunch of those pill pocket things, right? And they can smell it. Like, I had to like come up with a different way, so I did not physically touch the pill pocket and the pills. And I had, man, anyways, I came up with a whole bunch of stuff, which did help. But I know he can still taste it. That's the one thing that did surprise me. Because when I had to roofie him before, he did not like it. I had to like physically shove it down his throat. Maybe because I changed up the routine, like how I did it. But I know he can still taste it after a while, because he at first spit it out. I think in some ways he also almost knew, oh, this is helping me not be in pain, and whatever. He actually took the medication willingly. I'm not saying I had to pick it back up like, you're gonna eat this a few times, but he didn't fight me so much with that. It's just this cone of shame, right? That's the part I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, we do the same thing. Perhaps it's not so much as the whatever we need to do that stops us from wanting to do it, but it's this cone, this invisible rigid cone that makes us run into walls, run into people. And because everybody sees it. Because when it's with people, it's like, why do I feel like I have this invisible tattoo on me that says kick me? You know what I'm saying? So but when we have that invisible cone of shame, it's almost unbearable. On top of all the stuff, it's like adding an insult to injury, right? And so that I was like, wow, we are, as humans, when we the cone of shame, right? When we put, like, whether it's from society that they gave us, that they put the shame on us, or we are doing it to ourselves, when we have this shame about us, it just seems like all we want to do is to not make it so visible, not make it that we have to, like, we just feel out of sorts. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to walk anymore. Just end this. And that momentary, like, I just want relief right now, because I can't put up with another day, when it's not endless, when we know there's an end to this. Because most of the stuff that happens, I'm not saying there's no permanent things that we have to deal with that people shame us for, but most of life comes with these waves of events that brings about shame, whether we do it to ourselves or other people are doing it. We just want it to end, and we're willing to do whatever we need to do to compensate for it, like giving ourselves goodies, doing things under duress, by ourselves, by other people, like or from when you're helping people, you feel like, man, I feel so guilty, I got to do something for these people, and it ends up not being good. And the end result is that, yeah, the world will shame us for countless things. And we will also shame ourselves for countless things, right? But when we can logically, not like me with Jojo, obviously Jojo's smart, but he doesn't think like we do. But if we can just step back and logically think it out, think out the consequences that will result from removing right now, getting the relief from this real or perceived shame. The end result could be a lot worse. And it could be permanent. It could be permanent. Like, if we stop now and quit what we have to do to correct the situation, to get past the situation, like, there's nothing I can do to, like, my pockets were wet from, you can't go pump somewhere. I just had to get through it. I just had to remove my infant when he did a number 2 that was like a nuclear bomb, right? Like, there's nothing I can do. We just have to get past it, suck it up and drive on, right? Embrace the suck. Not in a detrimental way, but in some cases, yes, that should be the model. And just to remember, this too shall pass. This too shall pass, because if we do not let this pass, we will be mired in the shame. It will become permanent, because we will be so in the cycle of not being able to deal with it, causing further damage, and having to put on that cone of shame again. Using Jojo as the example, if he tore out his stitches because I just didn't want to give him the cone of shame to wear, he would have to probably wear longer. Heck, he might, for infection's sake, right? He could lose his leg, and where would we go there? So, because we are cognizant, we are humans. Yeah, sometimes people hand us a cone of shame to wear, and sometimes we put it on ourselves. But regardless, we are logical. We can think through this and just remember the consequences. The consequences could be, if we don't go through this and embrace the suck and suck it up and drive on for a temporary period, for a short period of time. It might seem forever. I get that. For a short period of time, we must put this on, whether it is from you or the external world, and get through it. And we don't have to ever wear it again, technically speaking, for the same situation, right? But we get used to it. And the next one that somebody hands the cone of shame, I'm not taking it. Or you don't have to feel so guilty, right? Get through some of this stuff so it doesn't become a permanent fixture in our lives. And this too shall pass. And with Jojo, it's passing. He understands. I'm not saying he understands, but he will understand this is not forever when it's not forever, right? So, with humor and all this involved, because I'm not saying it's easy when dealing with those who might be combative for a number of reasons, because, well, there are fur babies or people who just don't understand the logics of it. Sometimes they're running into you with their rigid cone of shame, and it's hurting. But you cannot, if it's, you are as person that's, you're not the person who's wearing this invisible cone, right? You are somebody who loves these people. That's just something also from the perspective of a helper, of somebody who's loving somebody who's going through it. We also have to suck it up and drive on and embrace the suck and find a humor, find the, and maybe talk about it, share it, talk to people, and make it not so stigmatized for whatever reason, right? And there are some things that shame is not improperly placed, depending on what it is. I'm sure you can imagine there's a level of shame that should be brought about for whatever, right? But nonetheless, we don't have to wear it forever, depending on the situation, right? The world will always bring you another set of issues and whatever that perhaps you feel shame about. But consider the logics of it and work it through and help other people talk about it. When we shed light on things like this, I think it makes it various things less shameful, and it removes a lot of the times when we're walking around bumping into walls, bumping into people because of this perceived shame for no obvious reason other than the fact that we don't know that we don't have to be ashamed of it, right? Because it's incorrectly applied. So the long and short of it is that I dedicate this to Jojo and his cone of shame and all his running into walls and into me and his crazy stares into teaching me this lesson that, wow, as humans, I believe that if we can work things out in our minds, logically speak out and talk about things, a lot of this shame that comes about will not exist, and we will be a lot more willing to go through what we have to go through, because we know from the bottom of our hearts, from the bottom of our soul, that some things have to be done to get to a better place. So that's it. This has been a long podcast. So anyways, I don't know. We don't have to wear the cone of shame, and we don't have to do things under duress when we can use our minds to calculate, to balance out what is the risk and benefit ratio to this, right? Anyways, I think I've drone on long enough. Likewise, anyways, I hope you guys are doing well. I think about you guys all the time, and I really appreciate guys listening to me. And have a blessed day. 2 weeks from now, hopefully, no more cone of shame, right? Have a blessed day.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.